Do you hate the thought of working past 55 or 60? Do you hate not being able to live the life you deserve today? Do you hate not knowing what your financial future looks like? It's time to stop doing what you hate. Here's your host, Mr. Harold Green.
Aloha, everyone. This is Harold Green of Bright Tree Financial Group, and it is time to stop doing what you hate. I hope you are having a fantastic day today. I am super excited to be bringing you this show like I normally am, and have a special guest on the show. But before I introduce my special guest, I want to remind you guys what our mission is. And our mission is to help the middle class become successful and go from where they are today to where they need to be, and also to stop doing the things that they hate. So are you ready? 1, 2, 3, let's get it. Our special guest today is Mr. Joe Delaney. Joe, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Harold. It's my pleasure to be here.
Where are you from, Joe? Tell everybody where you at and how they can, how they can learn more about you, and then we'll kind of get into our show.
Well, Harold, I have a theory that a lot of people come through Michigan. So I'm from Grand Rapids, Michigan. I'm always surprised as to how many people that I talk to actually either lived or are from Michigan. So I'm from the great state of Michigan, but I grew up in Southern California, and my company is called Lifeguard Wealth. And as you might imagine, I was a lifeguard. That's where that comes from in my youth for 7 wonderful summers, and just thought it was a great analogy for what we do here at Lifeguard Wealth, always looking after our clients' interests, and we're not afraid to jump in and help them if they need it.
And Joe, when they see a picture of your face, they can tell you probably you are still a lifeguard, right?
Yes, yes. I'm not literally saving lives anymore. I do think I play a meaningful life in my clients' financial lives, and I do stay pretty active, and I swim regularly, so I could probably still do the requal swim in record time.
That is fantastic. That is fantastic. So I want to talk a little bit about today, Joe, how you help your clients, your typical client, your average client, the kind of careers they have, their backgrounds, and then, how you actually help them, like not what's in your secret sauce, but just talk to people a little bit about what it is that, who it is that you help, and then how you help them.
So I work with what I would call your ordinary millionaire. My typical client profile is that we manage about $2.5 to $3 million per client on average. Work with a couple different niches: successful attorneys, business owners, and tech executives who have a lot of variable compensation. That probably makes up about 60% of my client base right there between those three.
Got it. And I would say those folks are still in the middle class. Would you agree with me that they're somewhere in the middle to upper middle class? They haven't really got into the rich stage yet?
Yes.
Okay.
Mass affluent to upper affluent would be where I'd categorize that.
Got it. And they haven't hit that higher echelon of $2 billion wealthy type, so they're still regular people. They go about their jobs and their lives like everybody else. You probably wouldn't recognize them on the street. They have some of the same issues that we have. And so I kind of want to get into that and kind of maybe demystify it, because, some people tell me, Harold, if I just had $1 million in my portfolio, life would just be gravy. Like it would be great. So talk to people a little bit about that, and why, just having $1 million is not necessarily like the end all be all type of thing.
Harold, I can assure you that all of my clients still put their pants on one leg at a time. And, I do have some clients that are, definitely in the more affluent category, and I just manage a portion of their wealth. Mm-hmm. But, they still face those same issues. They still have to look at, protecting their wealth through, insurance and proper estate planning. And, everybody, I'm in California, which is not a very estate planning friendly state. So, right. Everybody, especially if you have young kids, should have an estate plan. It's something that I insist that all my clients have, and making sure that you have the proper insurance in place. We don't sell any insurance. We're a fee-only advisor, but we want to make sure that that's all covered and covered well. So, making sure that, that they're protected, that they're invested properly, that they're diversified, and taking full advantage of the tax code. Those are the things that we look to make sure that our clients are squared away on. We also like to make sure that, and this is true for everybody, do you have an end of life plan? Are have you thought through that? We use something called EverPlan, which we provide to all of our clients at no extra charge to just make sure that they've gone through that process. I had a very dear friend of mine pass away in 2019, and he didn't, he hadn't really thought about that, and he would have really benefited from an EverPlan. So that sent me on a search to go find a tool that I could share with my clients, and that tool is EverPlan.
That's pretty exciting. I was excited about that when you shared that with me last time that we were together and we were talking about things like this. And one of my shows I did, the title was Open to Disaster. And one of the things about the middle class is we have a lot of blind spots, right? And so you just brought up a big one, and that was protecting wealth. I know people work really hard to generate what they have. And you mentioned something about like insurance and things like that. So I want you to share with people some of the common, I guess, rejections or misconceptions you find amongst your clients when you talk to them about things that no one's ever like broached the subject with them before, like the hesitation and things like that. When you tell someone, hey, you probably could benefit from a $10 million life insurance policy to cover your six on in this key situation here. Like, what are some of the common hesitations you find when you talk to people?
I think it's about educating them and then exposing them. And you can't insure against all risks, right? So you want to be smart about it. Some of the things that we look for is, do you have umbrella coverage? And we look for risk factors. Do you have teenage boy drivers, or do you have a boat, or do you have an airplane, or do you have rental properties where there could be risk associated with that? And then we look to insure against some of that, but you can't insure against all risks. So you want to be smart about it. You want to shop around a little bit, make sure that you're getting a competitive rate, and then you want to review it and make sure that do you still need insurance? Oftentimes we'll come in and clients will have large term policies that they got when their kids were young, and or maybe even whole life policies, and now their wealth has increased dramatically, and they might not have that same need for that life insurance. So then, and if it's a whole life policy where there's some cash value, well, why don't we look at long-term care insurance, and maybe we can roll that into that and take that asset and reutilize it in a more meaningful manner for them. So that's something we look at as well.
That's very important. And you mentioned another keyword that's extremely important. And I've heard many different takes on this. I have my own take on it, but I want to hear what you have to say to your clients about diversification. Like, what does diversification mean to you? Is it diversification amongst assets or different, stocks, bonds, mutual funds, or diversification amongst asset classes per se? How do you have that conversation with them?
It's a little about both. So
Okay.
I look at both asset location, where you put the assets. So let's assume you have the three traditional buckets: a Roth, which is tax-free, an IRA or a 401k, which is tax deferred, or a taxable account, which is taxable. So the Roth is pretty simple to understand. It's tax-free. So you want to put the assets that are most likely to grow in the Roth IRA first. So you fill that up with your riskier things like your stocks. Then you have the tax deferred accounts, 401k, IRA. Those are tax deferred. And so now at age 72, and with the new tax law change, age 75, depending on your age, let's just assume it's 72 for the moment. When you turn 72, you have to start taking something called an RMD, required minimum distribution. So you want to put the assets in there. And this does tie into this broader question of diversification. Right. You want to, but this is the thing that I see a lot of clients get, or a lot of new clients have wrong. You want to put the assets like your fixed income, your bonds, in your tax deferred account, or things that pay current income. We use a lot of alternative investments, and some of them are tax efficient, some of them are not. So we'll put the tax inefficient assets in the tax deferred account. So you essentially, assuming it makes sense to hold fixed income and alternatives in your portfolio, you're going to those might be kicking off income. So you want those in your tax deferred accounts because you don't have to pay taxes on it while you're under age 72. And then in the taxable account, you'll also want to put your growth-oriented assets in there because you get the more favorable tax treatment, long-term capital gain treatment, as long as you assume you hold it for a year. You also get the step up in basis, which is very attractive. So when you pass, you get a step up in basis, and that's basically the free lunch.
Yep.
You pass those assets on to your kids and not have to pay any taxes on it. So asset location is something that I talk to clients about. And then asset diversification, which is diversifying amongst different asset classes geographically. So you want to have some international assets, you want to have some domestic assets. If you're holding any real estate, you want to spread that as well. A lot of people love real estate. Real estate's great, but might have a tendency to see, they have a lot of real estate. I'm working with somebody here in Marin County. Well, that's not very diversified. So maybe that next purchase of real estate, because we advise on all things. I have a strong background in real estate, spent 10 years in the institutional real estate space, so I know a lot about real estate. Maybe that next acquisition, let's look outside of California. Let's look in, Austin, Texas, or something like that, if they have an affinity for real estate. And then we look at different asset types. So we have stocks and bonds, which a lot of people usually have a mix of those, but we also use a lot of alternative investments, which don't fit nicely into either box. And they have a lot of attractive characteristics around them and some things that we like to fully disclose around liquidity and things like that. So we use we use some alternative investments in our asset mix. And they've performed admirably over 2022 and in past years. So that's something that we look to have that discussion with the clients and see if it's a good fit for them or not.
Exactly. That sounds excellent. I'm going to ask you about a couple of different things where I want to start with something that you're probably familiar with, the whole FTX debacle, the scam with them using fake crypto. How do you feel about things like that when your clients come to you and say, I'm thinking about putting some money here, I'm thinking about putting some money there? What are your thoughts on that? Like, I call this protecting clients from themselves. So talk to me a little bit about how you protect them, because we talked about protecting the wealth, their estate plan, diversified, all of these different things. The only thing that we haven't talked about protection against is self. And how do you, and this is tough because there's a lot of pride, a lot of ego. They're successful people. They've worked hard. They deserve certain things, and they have a certain moxie about them, right? And so how do you have this conversation with them when it comes up?
Well, first you have to educate yourself about the opportunity that they might be presenting to you. Do you understand it? How does it work? So let's take cryptocurrency, or crypto tokens really is what they are, because they're not a currency.
Right.
I'll share a conversation. A client recently came to me and wanted my feedback on buying into Greystone, into their trust, which owns Bitcoin and things like that, because boy, it had fallen quite a bit. This was maybe 2 months ago, and we all know that the cryptocurrencies have come down quite a bit in value, including Greystone. And I said, well, let's unravel this a little bit, and I have some pretty strong beliefs around cryptocurrency. I think blockchain technology is here and is a wonderful thing, but I personally believe that the whole crypto thing is akin to a Ponzi scheme. And so anyways, we broke it down and we looked at it both philosophically, that it's very energy intensive and it's very speculative. And therefore, are you just looking to speculate around this because you think it's going to go up, or do you believe in the underlying technology and it's a great game changer and all that? And we kind of went through all of those different components. And he said, you know what? I think you're right. And we're going to pass, and we don't need to talk about this again. I'm off of this cryptocurrency, and I'm not going to suffer from FOMO, which is a very strong thing, right? Fear of missing out. And there was a lot of that going on in the run-up, right? And FOMO is a very strong, and I have fallen victim to it. I'm not perfect, and I have fallen victim to it in the past. But you have to keep that in check, and keep that in check for your clients to make sure, let's talk about what is the opportunity. Why does it make sense? Why does it make sense for you? Does it add value to your overall asset allocation. And so we go through all those discussions, and then we make a decision, and then we move forward and check back, and that's how I tackle it.
Right, because once you have the conversation, you educate them, and you have that real heart to heart. Normally, these things don't come back up, right? No matter how many times they hear it from different reputable people, like Tom Brady or whoever, right? And that's very important. And I think Grayscale went down to like $8. It's like $8 now. It's back up to like $9. I mean, it's super attractive, right? The Bitcoin trust type of thing. So I don't own any of it. I don't think I have any clients who own any of it with me. If they do, it's probably outside, and I don't know about it. So, hear no evil, see no evil kind of thing.
Yeah, we don't manage it. It's not something that we recommend in the slightest. I suspect a handful of my clients, I have some younger clients, they may have invested in it. Don't know if they're still invested in it, but hopefully they've learned a lesson and didn't put too many of their eggs in that basket.
Exactly. Now let's talk about some fun stuff. When you have money, you tend to want to have nice toys. Talk to me and the clients about boats and planes and all of these things that people with wealth tend to, want to enjoy and have. Like, how do you have the conversation with them about that? And, is it an asset, or is it just a toy in their portfolio or their repertoire?
Yeah, and I think that can fall into a lot of different categories. It can be a second home. I have some clients that have third homes. I have clients with boats. One client with an airplane. So you have to look at it from, can you afford it? Let's talk about, maybe something like a second home. So we would, if the client would like, we would do some financial planning around that if it was a little bit of a stretch. But most of my clients can afford to do those things. And it can also, even get down into the more mundane things. Oh, we're thinking about buying a second car for my clients that maybe don't have as much money. How do we finance that? Are we going to finance it? Are we going to lease it? So we'll help them with that decision. But really going through, and if the client is open to having that conversation, if you're thinking about a boat, well, is this just a nice to have, a need to have? Is it going to be something that's accessible and you're going to use it? Because boats are expensive.
They are.
You have to maintain them.
They are.
You have to purchase them, and then they have a tendency to sit a lot, right? And then
That's right.
They don't start when you want to go out for the booze, for a cruise on the bay, and it won't start. Well, because you haven't been down there in 6 months to check the battery to make sure you can turn. So
that's right.
I always want to make sure that people are if they're gonna invest in something, and this is more of a, as you said, a toy. This isn't an investment, although. With COVID and everything, some of these investments that some of these things that people have bought have actually appreciated and not depreciated.
Right.
But, I think, are you going to use it? So I'm always open to having that discussion of being a sounding board. Are you going to use it? Does it make sense, at this point in time in your life? And then if it does, then we figure out how to purchase it, whether it needs to be financed or not. And if you're when we had, very inexpensive money, it made a lot of sense to finance things. Now, money's a little more expensive, might make sense to take assets from somewhere else to pay for it. So you just have to go through that analysis of both the financial aspect, but also the personal part of it. And, is this really something that you're going to get a lot of enjoyment out? Is it really important to you and your family that you have this? And if you can afford it, then let's figure out how to do it in the most efficient way.
Right. What I love about what you're saying is you're like me. You never tell your clients no. You never say no. You figure the conversation out and you do it in a way that they can come to an intelligent decision to determine whether or not what they're about to do is going to become an asset for them or a liability.
Correct. Right.
Yeah.
And you have to think too about that liability risk, right? So we've got a boat, and now, people can fall off boats. We can, different things can happen. So then if you're going to get the boat, then let's make sure we review your insurance. Maybe we bump up your umbrella coverage, because just about all my clients have umbrella coverage, but maybe we take it from 3 million to 5 million.
Right.
Have this asset that's on water, and we want to, and people are probably going to be coming down and having a good time and maybe drinking, and things can happen. So let's make sure that you're protected should something unfortunate happen.
Right. I love it, because you're sharing everything that maybe a client doesn't think about. And I think that If I were an individual sitting on the fence looking to work with you, I think the biggest thing that I would get out of working with you is I can call you and talk to you about almost anything. Joe, it seems like you know everything. Is there anything you don't know?
Well, I suspect a few things.
Well, I want to thank you very much for sharing, your wisdom, sharing your advice, sharing how you work with people. And let's do a little bit of recap about what happened in 2022. And in your opinion, in 2022, was any of the things that we went through necessary? And if they were necessary, how did you help your clients mitigate some of the risk? I know you didn't mitigate all of it, but talk to people how you got, what do you think happened, and then how you helped them mitigate some of that risk last year?
Yeah, well, 2022 was an interesting year. Both equities were down and fixed income were down because of the rapid rise in interest rates, because the Fed was trying to tamp down inflation. So usually when equities are down, bonds are flat or maybe up slightly. But this was a bit of a unique year. It doesn't usually happen where both are down and down appreciably. So bonds were down because of that, again, that rapid rise in interest rates, and equities were down. So that's where, having some alternative investments, things like direct ownership of real estate and some other types of investments performed well. So that really helped out our portfolios for those clients that had the alternative investments. It really helped to make a challenging year really just a blip on the radar. So you always want to be, revisiting your asset mix and make sure that it's appropriate for you and your risk tolerance and your age and all of those variables, because you really want things that when one asset class is up, then this one might be down a little bit, or vice versa. When one's down, you want one that would be up. So you want that nice asset mix, which has a tendency to really smooth out the ride and make it great. And then we certainly checked in periodically. I thankfully don't have any nervous Nelly type clients, but I'm always checking in with my clients and saying, how are you doing with this? Everything okay? He's like, well, in most cases, like, why are you calling me? We're fine. Like, okay, well, I just want to check in because it's been a little volatile out there. I just want to make sure everything's, how are you? How is everything? And usually I would just check in with clients and just say, hey, how are things? And if the conversation talked about the portfolio, then we go there. But otherwise, we're talking about what they love to do and getting updates on family members and all those types of things. But we make a point to stay in touch with our clients, meet with them regularly, but also just check in. And that's the great part about my job is I get paid for checking in with my clients to make sure they're doing good.
That's exciting. And one of the things that you said last time we talked, it kind of inspired me a little bit. I know our firm's in different places doing different things and working with different types of clientele, but you said that you work with less than a certain number of people. Can you tell the listeners how many clients you actually work with per year?
Yeah, so I have 50 relationships. We just onboarded a new one last week. So that brings us up to a nice round number of 50 clients. Some of those are my clients' children. But yeah, so I have a very manageable client load. A lot of advisors that work in large firms, will have hundreds of relationships.
Yes.
And, and we're still growing and we're adding nicely. And so that's a nice load. So it allows me the benefit of being able to stay in touch and be part of my clients' lives on a regular basis. And I like that, to really provide that customized care and checking in with them. And so that's great. I like that.
So, Joe, I would consider you a specialty financial doctor where you specialize in, certain types of things. And so if people are out there in your area, I would highly advise them to seek you out. And then maybe you'll have a conversation with them and see if they are a right fit. And the other thing you also said that I love is the fact that not all clients are right for you. And it doesn't matter how much money they have. Sometimes it's okay to just kind of like step away. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I think that's very important for our mental health and sanity. And that's
exactly. We're not always the right financial advisor for every opportunity, and every opportunity is not right for us. But what it is, it's a beautiful thing.
Awesome. Well, Joe, thank you very much for being a guest on the show today. And so our listeners can find out more about you and your firm and what it is that you do by simply clicking in the show notes. And so hopefully you guys have enjoyed what we've talked about today. And until next time, everyone, 1, 2, 3, let's get it.
This is the podcastfactory.com.